Most people believe that if you just love someone hard enough, if you show them enough patience, tenderness, and proof that you won't leave, they'll eventually change. But here's the truth no one wants to admit. You can't love the fear out of an avoidant man. You can only love yourself enough to stop mistaking his fear for depth. Avoidant men don't pull away to protect themselves from you. They pull away to protect themselves from their own unconscious. They are at war not with you, but with the parts of themselves they've spent a lifetime denying. And no matter how much you love him, there are certain things you will never be able to change. Today we're exploring 5 things you'll never be able to change about an avoidant man through the lens of Jungian psychology, the shadow, the unconscious, and the wounds that shape a man long before he ever meets you. Because understanding these things doesn't just give you closure, it gives you your power back. You'll never change his relationship with intimacy. To the avoidant man, intimacy doesn't feel safe. It feels like exposure, standing naked in the psychological sense, stripped of control, of defenses, of the illusion that he doesn't need anyone. His childhood taught him one thing: closeness equals danger. Dependence equals weakness. So when you reach out with love, what you mean as warmth, he experiences as threat. Your affection becomes pressure. Your care becomes control. In Jungian terms, you've triggered his shadow, the shame, fear, and vulnerability he's buried for years. He wants to love you, but his unconscious won't let him. Because to love you means confronting himself, and that feels unbearable. He disappears not because you're too much, but because intimacy reminds him of how little of himself he's met. You can't fix this by loving harder or proving you're safe. You can only accept that his fear of closeness isn't about your worth. It's about his wound. And the moment you stop trying to rescue him from his fear, you rescue yourself from his cycle. You'll never change his instinct to control through distance. Avoidant men crave control the way anxious lovers crave reassurance. It's how they regulate fear, by deciding when to be close and when to vanish. They love on their terms not because they're cruel, but because uncertainty terrifies them. To the avoidant, control equals survival. Beneath that calm exterior lies a deep, wordless terror of being consumed. So when you ask for openness, he hears, "I'm losing control." When you ask for consistency, he hears, "I'm being trapped." When you ask for commitment, he hears, "I'm disappearing." Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That is the avoidant man's reality, ruled by invisible fear, pretending it's choice. He builds walls and calls them boundaries, withdraws and calls it peace. He disappears and calls it clarity. And every time you try to close the distance, he widens it, not to hurt you, but to protect the illusion that he's still in control. You can't change this reflex until he faces the fear underneath it, often only after life breaks his illusion of mastery through loss or loneliness. That's when solitude stops feeling like peace and starts feeling like exile. You'll never change the way he confuses love with danger. Most avoidant men grew up where love was conditional. Affection came at the cost of silence, performance, or pretending not to feel. So now they don't trust love. They test it. They provoke it. They retreat from it the moment it feels real. When you get close, he expects rejection. When you show loyalty, he becomes suspicious. When you forgive him, he feels guilt. And guilt is a mirror he can't bear to look into. So he sabotages before you can leave. He fears abandonment so much that he becomes the one who abandons. He mistakes emotional safety for boredom, stillness for suffocation, gentleness for weakness. No matter how soft your love, he feels danger. Where you only see care, because his body has been trained to equate closeness with pain. You can't unteach a nervous system what it learned in fear. You can only stop trying to prove that love isn't dangerous, and let his own silence teach him what safety really feels like when you're gone. You'll never change his shame. Under every avoidant man's detachment lies shame, for needing, for caring, for wanting the very thing he runs from. In Jungian terms, shame guards the shadow, hiding the soft, emotional, and dependent parts we were told were unworthy. So he buries them. He acts proud. He acts indifferent. He distances himself not to punish you, but to avoid being known. Your love threatens to expose what he spent years hiding. That's why he withdraws right after connection. Why he sabotages right when things feel safe. You didn't do something wrong. You simply got too close to the truth. And no matter how much compassion you offer, you can't love a man's shame into healing. Only he can, when he decides that vulnerability isn't weakness but a form of strength. Until then, he'll keep mistaking avoidance for power, and you'll keep mistaking his silence for indifference when it's actually self-loathing, wearing a mask of control. You'll never change his timing for transformation. You can't decide when an avoidant man will awaken. You might be the woman who awakens his awareness, but not the one he transforms for. Because individuation, Jung's process of becoming whole, follows his pain, not your patience. That moment may come years after you've gone. You can't accelerate his evolution by waiting, nor heal his wounds by sacrificing your own. Love isn't waiting for someone to be ready. It's meeting someone who already is. So if you're loving or haunted by an avoidant man, remember, you didn't fail because he couldn't stay. You simply met him at the wrong stage of his inner journey. One day, whether he says it or not, he'll realize you were never the danger. You were the mirror, the catalyst, the invitation to heal. And though he may never come back, the light you offered will live in his memory as the first moment he felt seen. Avoidant men aren't heartless, they're terrified. Sons of silence raised in emotional deserts where vulnerability meant punishment. But you don't have to shrink your love to fit their fear. Love was never meant to be a lesson in endurance, but a meeting between two souls who can face their shadows together. So let him run if he must, but don't chase him into his darkness. You've already done your part by showing him what light feels like. And now, it's your turn to step back into yours, because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for a man lost in avoidance is to show him what it looks like when a woman finally chooses peace over potential.